Hello and welcome to the Exploding Appendix podcast. This is an emergency podcast that comes out of an emergency panel. So everything that's in this podcast has been made very quickly in order to get some information out and to share this discussion. I'll give you a bit of a background on why this event came about and why the podcast has come about. And maybe I'll explain a little bit about our personal story, about how we ended up getting involved in this. So we run salons every 3 weeks on a Tuesday between January and June and September and December. In these sessions we run a series of workshops, talks, conversations and a range of different things. But one of the things that we've been doing is interviewing different people, and some of those people happen to have worked in the University of Brighton. About 8 different people over the last 2 years have actually been from the University of Brighton in some form or other. And I've really gotten a lot from them. I found it's really good conversations, and I'm really impressed by a lot of the research that these academics are working upon. So that's been really nourishing for us, even though I'm not, for example, at Brighton University. I'm not involved in Brighton University, but it felt like as part of the city this was really important, and their work was really important to our community. So that led me to think about the role of arts and humanities, and I suppose humanities are just as important in this respect because I feel that they contribute to a kind of civic conversation, a kind of public sphere, where we are sort of discussing a range of issues that kind of extend beyond a mere focus on art, but often come back to art as a theme. So arts and humanities are often really important to us. And it started to get me thinking about ways in which we might need to defend arts and culture in Brighton. So that was really the impetus to then kind of organise this. In talking to people, we've been talking about other issues around Brighton, the sort of the lack or the number of cuts to sort of MPO funding. So that's been real, and how that's hit, especially art galleries. So we no longer have a publicly funded art gallery in Brighton. So things like this have been sort of other worries, other charities and organisations going through different things. So it's sort of expanding out in some respects and working out all the different cuts and things that are affected, from arts organisations to youth groups and so on, to universities. So this was partly a way of bringing lots of different people together and having a conversation. I think in order to sort of understand some of the context for some of this discussion, I think it's worth saying a few things about what's been going on at Brighton University. So I'm told that there are about 130 people in a pool for compulsory redundancies. Originally, the university said that they wanted to make 80 to 96 people redundant. 86 people opted for voluntary redundancies, but of those 86, not all of those people will be taken. And the university's management now seem to be still pushing for the full amount. There's been a 94% vote of no confidence in the Vice-Chancellor, Deborah Humphreys. This seems in part due to financial decisions made by the university's senior management. We know the university is saying that they're trying to make 17.9 million in savings, but there is also, it seems to be 50 million, but the university has also spent 50 million on a building project and 17 million trying to buy back a long lease from Virgin Active. So there's a lot of questions that people have around the finances and the financial decisions around what's been going on at university, and why staffing, and particularly people within humanities, are being focused on in terms of the cuts. And some people are therefore making kind of alternative suggestions on where the cuts could come from. A financial expert has talked to the union and has looked into the university's finances. They made a request to see the finances but were denied access, and could only go on what's been put in the public domain. Nonetheless, they did say that they found it a kind of odd situation, and had sort of questions about the different books that were being used within the university's finances. But because none of the finances are really in the public domain, it's hard to understand the rationale for the cuts, and that's adding to some of the confusion and some of the difficulties in having a way of commenting on what's going on. So that gives you a kind of flavour of what's been going on at Brighton University. That's pretty much all I've got to say for now. So because unfortunately one of our speakers from Brighton University had to drop out at last minute due to illness, so what we have instead is I've got a quick call that I need to make with Lorenza from Brighton University, and then we'll get on to the broader panel in a second. So first part will be talk to Lorenza, and then we'll go into the main panel. Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone.
Hi, Lorenza. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this on such short notice. Could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing at Brighton University?
So I'm a PhD student. I'm doing a project on queer kinship through creative methods, participatory creative methods, investigating second generation and migrant kinship in Brighton. I've been doing this PhD for 7 years now, and the 7 years that it's taken me to get this far, every year Brighton, the University of Brighton management has tried to somehow curtail rights or working rights, or there's been a series of redundancies, and until we've gotten to this latest scandalous, in my opinion, series of redundancies.
Yeah, no, sort of deep solidarity in relation to this, because it's I think it's really worrying, genuinely.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask how we as a city can organise around this and show solidarity in relation to this.
So I'm with Helen. I'm part of the PhD group. Well, we're a group of PhD students who are organising and trying to support the efforts of the lecturers, but also the students. There's I don't know if anybody knows about the occupation of the offices of management at Moorsporn. So we're just trying to rally around people who are taking action within the University of Brighton. We also ask as many people as possible to write letters to Deborah Humphreys, to Rusi Jaspal, to Caroline Lucas, to express their whatever they want to express, but hopefully it's going to be against the redundancies. And also maybe it would be also, I don't have any links, but I can definitely send you to the UCU page, Brighton UCU page, and come to any, there's going to be a, tomorrow I know there's going to be a, I'll send you the link, but at Copcroft, management is going to have an important meeting, and the UCU is asking for people to join them outside the building. They have started a strike, indefinite strike. So if you want to support the picket line, it's going to be in different campuses, and you can get the information of where the picket lines will be on the UCU website again. So yeah, any form of support is really helpful, because when we are taking up such big fights, it's always important to have support and to be reminded that we're not alone, I guess.
So yeah, there's a petition that can be signed as well. There's an open letter.
You can write your own letter, and you can also join demonstrations.
What's that, sorry?
I was just referring to Helen's letter, which was really a good one, and obviously had a standard response from management. But yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that that is an option.
So in their letter to University of Brighton senior management, the School of Humanities at the University of Westminster write, we are aware that the university has proposed these redundancies as part of efforts to make 17.9 million in savings. We are also aware that the university has spent over 50 million on building projects in the last 2 years.
And 17 million
on buying back a long lease from Virgin Active. We are angered that these high levels of capital expenditure by management are now being followed by devastating threats to the livelihood of staff and the quality of education in the at the university. We firmly agree with the University of Brighton's UCU chair, Dr. David Abel, that staff should not be made to pay for the failures of management. I thought this was really well put, and I wanted to quote it directly. Could you tell us a little bit about the managerial decisions that have led to the crisis at Brighton University?
So I think we can talk about grave mismanagement, because although they were following a more national policy of where universities have been asked to invest in property, the way that it's not clear the way it's been done. University of Brighton refuses to release all the numbers, saying that they need for some reason they can't release all the numbers, but they haven't given real tangible reasons why. So you quoted the 17. You quoted the 52 million that was invested in the Lewis Road project. On top of that, there's 17 million, and I think it's 17 million, nearly 18 million, to buy out the Virgin Active lease, and that which is a really weird time to want to buy out a lease, because it would have run out next year. So we don't understand why the lease had to be bought out, and why it's more or less the same amount of savings that the university needs to make. We don't understand why they want to make these savings through redundancies. There are a series of other proposed ways these savings could be made. There's a number of Brighton University lecturers that have an alternative proposal. This has not even been taken into consideration by the executive board of Brighton.
Prior to the current management, University of Brighton developed a reputation for being both public-facing and fostering educational inclusivity. It could be easy to imagine the university completely separate from the city, but in reality there were certain important social impacts on the city and beyond. How should we think about the relationship between universities and the broader community that surrounds them?
Oh, I think this management of Brighton University has completely broken the trust of the local community. There are loads and loads of projects. I don't even know half of them, but I know about which was a direct line between Brighton and the community. I think there's a lot of research that's been done with homeless people, with migrants, oral history project. All the funding for these projects will be cut. Will not be there. Research funding is being cut quite drastically.
Hi. Sorry for ignorance, but can you tell us a bit more about the occupation you mentioned?
So we don't know who exactly occupied. We know it was a group of Brighton students. They wanted to anonymity, and they occupied the 8th floor of the Copper building 11 days. Management tried to get them out by flooding them with sewage water. Then the judge refused to to find, they went to court. I can't remember what happened, but the judge didn't sign the order to get them out of the building. And then finally, on the 11th day, mysteriously a smoke alarm went off. And there was supposed to be a fight as soon as they were out of the building by there 5 brave who occupied the building for 7 days. All Brighton University students.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. It's been really great. And yeah, and thank you for coming and talking to us.
My pleasure.
We also have a statement from Polly Wright from the CCA that I wanted to read out. About this relates to the closure of the CCA, so that's Brighton University's public-facing gallery. So the statement reads, "The University of Brighton has recently taken the decision to close Brighton Centre for Contemporary Arts, winding up the programme and bringing to an end 5 years of work establishing, building and growing the organisation. The decision means Brighton will now be without a dedicated, publicly funded contemporary visual arts programme following the recent round of MPO cuts from Art Council England. This is especially troubling because of the drop in cultural provision for students, artists and communities in the city. The University of Brighton Executive Board have been clear that the reasons for their decision are financial, but despite acknowledgement of the quality and value of the CCA programme, support from BHCC, ACE and across the sector, they do not feel the investment in culture is a priority or a core part of the core business, which is now their focus. Brighton CCA director and team have always felt that the programme provision and approach were about making a positive contribution to the art ecology of the city, supporting creative communities and offering audiences access to art and artists as part of an inclusive and diverse programme which centred collaboration and shared resources. From the commissions to our project space, from making research public and facilitating community projects in the current climate, we hope that our approach can continue to be a model for the future. While there is clear disappointment that our work has been brought to a premature close, we are also aware that we, and this decision, is not an isolated case, and we stand in solidarity with colleagues and staff also facing redundancy through this period of massive uncertainty. We want to thank all our partners, artists and supporters and advocate for the brilliant creative practitioners and audiences that have informed, shared and celebrated all that Brighton CCA stands for. So now I want to move on to the panel discussion. So I would like to welcome to the panel. So we have John Marchant from the John Marchant Gallery, which can be found on Ship Street, Brighton. John Marchant is a gallerist, curator and art director currently living in Brighton, UK. Having worked for many years with internationally renowned artists such as Nan Goldin and Gary Hume, Marchant now represents celebrated and emerging contemporary artists as well as the Jamie Reed Archive. We also have Lucy Day, who is the Executive Director of the Phoenix Art Space, an arts charity based in the centre of Brighton, housing 100 plus artist studios, 3 exhibition spaces and a very active community engagement programme. Prior to this, Lucy programmed a central London gallery as part of an independent curatorial partnership, Day plus Gluckman, for over a decade. She is a mentor, art consultant and founder-director of A Woman's Place project, a contemporary arts organisation which takes equality as its starting point, exploring it creatively through exhibitions, projects and events. She is chair of Devonshire collective, Vault Gallery in Eastbourne, which recently became an Arts Council England National Portfolio Organisation, alumna of the Claw Leadership Programme, and a former Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. We also have Kath James. So Kath James is the Artistic Director of Southeast Dance, originally from Australia. Kath's background is in dance, having been a dancer at the Rambert Dance Company and Siobhan Davis, among others, as well as an international dance teacher before moving into producing and management. She is a curator. She has curated, written about and choreographed dance during her 40-year career. So yeah, a big welcome to all of them, and thank you so much for coming. Yeah, I wonder if you could just say a bit about your backgrounds, the organisations and groups you're involved in, and say something about the challenges you faced.
Yeah, hi. It's me first. I hate that. My name's John Marchant, and I have a gallery in town, very discreet gallery, showing a range of international artists. We've been pretty peripatetic for some years, but have now established a space in the centre of Brighton in Ship Street. You've got to find us, hard to find. But we're already getting quite a fair bit amount of attention internationally for what we're doing, actually. It's a terrible time to open a gallery. I wouldn't recommend anybody do it anyway. It's a stupid thing to do. But I've had quite a lot of, nearly 30 years experience now in the art world. And yeah, come and see what we're doing if that appeals. We've currently got an exhibition of the last works of Genesis P. Orridge, an American artist called Eric Heist. That's on till July 1st.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Day. I'm the Executive Director at Phoenix Art Space, which is kind of fairly centrally located just near St. Peter's Church. So it's a huge building that actually, funny enough, keeps or often gets confused for the university. But we are a fiercely independent space that's been running for about 26 years. We house over 100 artists through around 100 studios. We have 3 gallery spaces. We have a very active a learning and community engagement program. We work in partnership a lot, and we show artists with national and international reputations, and also do a lot of work in partnership with community organisations. I think Bradley was asking about some of the challenges, and I'm sure some of you will know that this year was the National Portfolio Organisation announcements for the next 3 years of funding. And in the last round, we lost 2 NPOs, 2 national portfolio organisations who had funding for many years. The visual arts sector has been really decimated recently. So that's a challenge for Phoenix, a challenge for us. There's a lot of money coming out of Brighton, leaving Brighton, in some ways rightly going to other countries, to other places that don't have much cultural engagement, but the impact and effects of that are already being felt very hard and wide, not least with the closure of CCA in Brighton. So that's since January, I think that's 4 organisations that have shut their exhibition programme that have been publicly funded. We're not. We find funding through grants and trusts rather than Arts Council NPO. But yeah, so I think there's a lot to unpick in terms of the challenges that we face as creative practitioners, both on a local front and a regional front and a national front, but at the moment I'm thinking about Brighton. Thanks.
Hello everyone, I'm Kath James. I'm Artistic Director at Southeast Dance, and I co-lead the organisation with Rachel Gibson, who is the Executive Director. Southeast Dance is a dance development charity and funded as a national portfolio organisation by the Arts Council England, amongst other funders. We're based in the new dance space, which is literally opposite Brighton CCA in the new Circus Street development. We've only been there open for 1 year, so we're still in early days of a completely new business model. We have 3 studios, one of which turns into a small studio theatre, and we have artists hot desking for free on one of the levels of the building. So just about what we do. We support dance artists to reach their potential through development programs, residencies and performance opportunities. We deliver a wide range of classes from very youngest children through to very older adults who are living with dementia. We support teenagers and young people through our talent development programs, and we want to make everybody welcome to the dance space. That's one of our missions, is like get everybody dancing. So helping people to find their own way into dance and to benefit from the health and well-being benefits of dance. So we have, over the past decade or so, witnessed an almost complete disintegration of dance in schools. And with it being almost impossible to get dance artists into schools or get schools out of school and into dance workshops or performances, it's been systematically removed from the curriculum, with more and more students being pointed to external dance studios and providers to deliver dance for our young people. Of course, there are some schools that have got dance provision. Most of the private schools have, but this is not equal and it's not universal and it's not equitable. So there are many young people with no access to dance unless their parents can afford it and have the wherewithal to get them there in any case. Whilst we provide many activities for young people who face multiple barriers, we don't reach them all as yet. And I find it absolutely indefensible that dance is not offered universally and equitably across the UK. Sport England statistics show that football is the most popular physical activity for boys and dance is the most popular physical activity for girls. Football is available in every school and yet dance is not. Sorry, more ranting. There's something here about value. Our current government puts money at the top of the tree. That's what success looks like, and arts and culture is at the bottom. Sunak is clear that maths equals money and the arts don't. So it seems this government's measure of success is monetary, whilst a fully rounded and balanced cultural and social life for all constituencies is not a measure of success for them. Whilst the government are happy to crow about our soft power internationally and export our arts across the world, they do nothing to actually ensure the future of these arts at grassroots level, and in fact continually erode opportunities for our young people to develop in the arts. For 25 years, we've collaborated with Brighton University, with the different schools, as well as the BCCA, and before that rebranding with the Salus Benny. And it's incomprehensible to me that they're losing the brilliant artist lecturers that we've been working with and leaving the students high and dry in the arts. Rant over.
So yeah, I was wanting to say, ask a little bit about, I think I've already said something about why, for us, Exploding Appendix, this was important. And I just wanted to ask a little bit about, as an artistic community, how can we organise and show solidarity with the workers who are currently at risk of losing their jobs and the students whose degrees are at threat?
We've already written to the Vice-Chancellor. We previously had a relationship with the University of Brighton about developing a cultural corridor from the Moulscombe campus all the way down through to Grand Parade and all of the arts organisations along there, and had trusted in that relationship and those dialogues that we've been having over the past number of years. And I feel that we've been completely cut out of any equation, of any conversation about what the future of that cultural corridor might look like. So we have already written to Deborah Humphreys.
Yeah, likewise, I've written to Deborah and also addressed the governors at a recent prize giving, which I don't think is terribly popular, but felt it needed to be said. We have partnerships with Brighton as well, with Brighton University. We offer a studio award for the fine arts students. We've got 2 in at the moment, one of them's here, hello, and another one next year. So, and we also offer the Platform Graduate Award. So we do have relationships, but I am really, really nervous for the fine art department. It feels like it's being slowly eroded. There's been so many restructures there. And I know the lecturers there are struggling. In terms of solidarity, this has all kind of happened fairly quickly. I suppose my solidarity has particularly been with supporting Ben and Polly and the team at CCA. And I've been in a lot of conversations with them. Of course, for us, it's it's really frustrating because we were in conversation only a few weeks ago about how to work in partnership and what we might do, and investigating this cultural corridor and just all the things that we could be doing, partly in response to the recent cuts that Arts Council made. So it feels like it's a domino effect of cut upon, just take it away. So I think I'm still reflecting and thinking on how that's what that solidarity might look like as the process is going on.
Yeah, and hopefully tonight we can also try and flesh some of that out as well. We now have a sort of redacted comment, which is about stuff that we can all do: attend pickets, sign petitions, donate to strike funds.
Well, as somebody in the private sector, as it were, it's hard for me to comment, to be perfectly honest, but what you've just said about joining picket lines, writing, getting together is a sort of universal system for really trying to fight things. And obviously in the last year, we've seen a heck of a lot of strike action, but I have a feeling that the people are behind it. The general public is behind it. And I think if we can all communicate with each other, tell each other what's going on, join in with WhatsApp groups and so forth, then we might get somewhere. Obviously, with this particular government that we've got, we have a hefty fight, but hopefully, their time is running out. Hopefully, their time will run out before it's too late. And services which are absolutely vital for the arts, not just in the city, but nationwide and worldwide, are not decimated beyond repair. On the point I was just making about information, did everybody else in the room know about the occupation? Everybody.
I had heard of it. I didn't hear all the details which were discussed there, though.
Okay.
No.
Because did you know about that, Lucy? A little bit. You did. You didn't. Okay.
No, I didn't either.
Right. Okay. So it's not universal knowledge.
Yeah.
Things like that should be, really.
Yeah. And I think
we should all
it's
know
also
about this,
it's
so we
also
should all be
ways
able
of
to
getting
join
this out to the press and
sure.
and getting the press involved, really.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say as well around the senior management thing, I think it's clearly not transparent to anyone in the university apart from senior management what they're doing. So it's quite hard for us to comment.
Exactly. Yeah.
To be perfectly honest. So I know people are calling for transparency. Maybe that's something we need to be calling for as well, to sort of say what the heck is going on. Because I think that's why as a panel, I'm struggling to think, what can I say? We don't know, they don't know. Sorry, can I just add something as well?
Yeah, do.
It's really a follow on from the previous question, but I think it's around visibility. I think some sections of the arts community are more visible than others. I know visual artists as individuals tend to not be very present. So they're in their studios. I think dance is probably different, but I think visibility of the arts is really critical, and not just once a year at the festival. It's got to be all year round, and we've got to actually be seen, be present, be active, be advocating at all levels, really. So not just at the university, but at the council, because we are losing the culture. We're losing culture in Brighton, and it's just so important to Brighton.
Do people have questions? Yeah.
Just to echo a bit what Lucy was saying, that with the recent NPO cuts, some of the one of the reasons given for some of the organisations losing their funding from Arts Council.
Is it possible to say which ones lost their funding? Is that something?
Fabrica.
White House.
But one of the reasons given was, you're in Brighton, have you thought of relocating? And so that seems to be particularly pertinent to what you were just saying, Lucy, about being visible and talking about what's happening in Brighton. Is that rather than, obviously in a healthy, ideal world, people to see, well, great place Brighton is, let's try and make everywhere like Brighton. And, that's what surely levelling up is. But in fact, it's just levelling down. We'll take all the money out of Brighton and give it to someone else.
Yeah, I'm a freelance staff member from Fabrica as well. And even though I'm still sort of work there, things haven't been up the same since April, which was like our last exhibition. And it's just so heartbreaking that, right now, the galleries, Fabrica is managing to still, be part of the our community by running their commercial events like weddings and film nights and such events. But it is a bit uncertain, a bit terrifying, how long it will take us to find private funding for my hobby, because, and it's just like overall like really, pardon my French, but really fucking frustrating, because as a charities organization in which really focuses on, you know, community, the art community from like different backgrounds, from like young people to like elderly, like a lot of volunteers from there were retired people, and now they have nowhere to go. They don't have nowhere to spend their like time culturally because it's been like shut down. And it also came for a shock to us in November how it didn't make it to the portfolio after like 20 plus years of just being in the map. And it's so for someone who came to the UK to, because I'm from Latin America, and of course like over there like economy and money is more important than, you know, culture and stuff. And I came here to the UK because I thought it was like an example of like guiding when it comes to art and cultures, but it is really, if like it, in a national level here, like it's struggling to, you know, maintain their arts, like I don't know how it's gonna be seen like for the rest of the world, like what kind of, you know, examples is setting up to the world, like, oh, if you're good at maths, like you're the best, but if you know, if you do art, it's not, you know, it's not as good, it's not useful, you're not, it's, you know, it's really unfair.
Actually, if you just literally look across the channel to the way the arts are funded in France, from grassroots up, children as young as 4 are going to the theatre as a regular thing, not just with their schools, but with their families. Look at Germany, everyone from 16 to 25 got 200 euros to spend on culture as they emerged from the pandemic. They could buy a musical instrument, they could go to the theatre, they could go to a music gig, but that's the level of commitment to cultural education on the continent. And we are just not anywhere near that. And it's devastating. It's really devastating. And I think there's something about, you know, the UK's practices, our artistic practices are looked on incredibly well, especially in terms of our participatory practices. They're world leading, and yes, and music. I'm really talking from a dance perspective. I have to say that's my area of knowledge, and and certainly with our disabled companies, in terms of disabled dance companies, we're world leading, and yet we just treat our artists like crap.
I'm finding this really interesting from a kind of practical economics perspective. You know, I think there's been 2 really amazing points made. One about the lack of value put on the arts, and 2 about the arts being seen as kind of uneconomically viable. And I do always find that really interesting in the UK, because the arts are hugely economically viable, but they're not a short-term financial gain. They're a long-term investment. So, for example, providing children and adolescents with access to art and culture, especially for their mental health, is absolutely, you know, absolutely vital in terms of creating well-rounded adults who will be able to go into a workforce and do 9 to 5, you know. So it's really interesting, this kind of, I feel like this perspective in the UK. I don't think it's recent either. I think it's always been this way. As far as I have experienced it, I'm in my mid-30s now, and I feel like it's ever in my life, at least in the last 20 years, it has always been difficult to find people that put emphasis on economic funding for the arts and culture in England. I don't find it so much in Ireland, where I'm also from. I feel that there's a big emphasis there, and that was really interesting to hear that after COVID in Germany, £200 were allocated for was it young people, for cultural investment. It's really interesting now because I'm studying to be an art psychotherapist. So it's really, really interesting because art psychotherapy is becoming more respected as a form of therapy, because basically it's proving itself in terms of evidence. So when something becomes, they call it evidence-based in the psychotherapeutic world, and something kind of statistically becomes evidence-based, that it's making a big difference and doing very well. I find it really interesting as someone studying art psychotherapy that there's still so little funding in the arts in other ways. If this industry is becoming evidence-based, then why is there a lack of funding for dance, for music, for visual arts, for galleries? And Brighton, I feel like, was a really well-respected hub in the UK for the arts for quite a while, especially in the 2000s when I went to university there. And it's a real shame I went back recently and I've seen a big change, you know, in the arts that you can see, the available art institutions that are surviving. And I've seen a big change. I find it really heartbreaking, because if we don't kind of geographically invest in places that were already propagating and really important for that, then I'm wondering what we're going to have in the next 5-10 years. Like, what are we going to have? You know, because it's important not for everybody to think that the arts are accessible through the internet on social media. It's important for young people to feel they can get on their feet and walk to a place and experience an art festival and experience culture and immerse themselves within a culture. So geographical funding is also important, not just UK wide. Anyway, so those are the points I was going to make. Thank you very much, by the way, for everybody who's raised such good points.
Thank you.
I guess I come from with a longer perspective, because I've been teaching in art schools for a long time. And even when I was doing my first art degree, we were at that cusp of everything changing. All the tutors were like appalled by the cuts that were going on. That was in the middle of the 80s. Technicians were being slashed, resources, facilities, you know, extra modules were being cut. So you just had one a year. And the whole time my adult life that I've been teaching, the experience has been cut. You know, Thatcher put a moratorium on art spending in 1978. You know, she didn't want any more courses that were being, you know, dreamt up by the Coldstream Committee. And after 68, they had an inquiry to see if the Coldstream reports had in some way incited, let's say, the Hornsey sit-in and the one in Brighton. They met 48 times before publishing something in 1971. This is like the good, great architects and artists and politicians, you know, Pevsner and all those people. They were funded. They were a government organization. They met 48 times between the end of the Troubles in 1968 and publishing something in 71. That shows you the intensity of funding and interest in the direction of the arts. They, you know, all that Maynard Keynes stuff, you know, insisting on dance, insisting on the opera happening here, having a proper international opera, and all that sort of initial post-war settlement stuff was that, you know, that those 48 meetings where they looked at everything that had come in from, they put out a survey for everybody to talk about what art education should be. They met 48 times to discuss the evidence. And, you know, to me, that's just, if you think of the people making decisions at the moment, their level of knowledge of interest in the arts is non-existent. And they're making decisions about all of our futures because of, you know, some Excel sheet somewhere or other. And that's it's not this level. It's not, yeah, we had all the, you know, years of austerity where really valuable organizations were shut down, and resources, you know, youth education and after school clubs and all of that stuff where lots of imaginative creative stuff was done, all got shut down. That's, you know, that's then. And now we kind of, you know, this is what has been going on, if in case we hadn't noticed, you know, for the last 30 years. And now, you know, I'm really glad there's an uproar. I'm really glad that everybody, hopefully everywhere, is going to say this is not okay for us, you know, but it's not like it's just happened, you know. It has been happening, you know, it's been happening since, you know, before Thatcher was Prime Minister. She was already making a new architecture, you know, and if you read the sort of history of the Arts Council, it's the same thing. They took on a policy of American privatization. They thought we could get the same kind of funding that the Americans do by rich people, and that's what art should, that is the picture and the model of how art should be funded here. You know, the rich will philanthropize and we'll get a kind of version of arts like in America they do. That was a decision up top. We're talking about decisions right at the top, not small local decisions. You know, that's what we've got to take into consideration.
I just wanted to speak to, actually following on from several of your points, I think, but also the points the person made online about the evidence-based approach and the changes. And we've seen significant changes to Arts Council, how they measure success. So that, you know, the fact that nowadays when you write an Arts Council application, the amount of space you have to actually say what you're doing compared to how you're doing it and who you're doing it for is quite insane. Yes, yeah, exactly. It is instrumentalization. So the idea of the evidence base is very strong. I also wanted to speak to somebody said about the financial, the push for everything to have a financial agenda, and that it should be washing its own face, which the arts can't. It's never has and it never will. There was a report that was produced quite a few years, a long time ago now, by AHRC, the value of arts and culture, and it felt that there was a bit of a turning point at that point where people would actually start to value art and culture, not for its monetary value and its potential and its investment potential, but actually for the value it actually brings to society and culture. That seems to have been slowly eroded over the years, and I'm not particularly optimistic it's going to change. Even with the change of government, it's going to take a very, very long time for it to change. But I think we do need to go back to those things around how we value ourselves, and rather being told how we should value ourselves, that we actually have to be visible about how we want to value ourselves and how we are valued by the audiences that we work with, the participants that we work with, the artists that we work with.
Okay, me and Helen have got to go, but we wanted to read a statement that we sent in from the Social Circles group.
Yeah, please do.
That'd be okay if I could do that. Thank you. Social Circles is an artist-led, Brighton-based collective of socially engaged artists committed to supporting socially engaged practice, individual artists and their processes. And we work in a variety of ways with groups in a multitude of different media. I'm just going to kind of cut this down a bit, but we recognise the impossibility and challenge of sustaining this work in the current context of arts funding cuts in Brighton. The disappearance and erosion of organisations and venues who can support and commission this essential work leaves artists to self-sustain work with communities. Whilst artists are resilient and resourceful, after 2 years of a pandemic, there are levels of exhaustion, which means it's difficult to continue.
Yeah.
It's vital that the city finds a way to directly support artists to continue to work with communities through social practice and sustain their own artistic practice. What has been built here by artists through the support of organisations including Brighton CCA, Onca, Cease, Lighthouse, Phoenix Art Space and Fabrica, as well as others, has enabled Brighton to gain recognition as a place known for artists working with socially engaged practices that engage with challenging, complex issues and with communities in need. This year-round, slow, process-based work needs proper sustenance to continue to grow and evolve for the city and beyond. That's the end of our statement. I'm sorry we can't stay, but I wanted to share that.
And you've sent me the statement as well. So thank you so much for reading it. It's really, really appreciated.
Hi, everybody. I want to say thank you to Bradley, first of all, for getting this together. It's tremendous solidarity, especially at such short notice. I'm one of the members of staff who's in the at-risk pool, and it's pretty, I mean, it's as horrendous as you might imagine, but the couple of things that I wanted to say, I think turn on the question of senior management, because it sounds like such an abstract thing. And I agree absolutely that they're not transparent, even though transparency is one of the buzzwords about how they promote themselves. But in order to get there, I wanted to step back a little bit. Because whenever I hear the word culture, I always think in terms of class. I can't help it. It's where I'm from, a family where people hadn't gone to university. And it was tremendously difficult to go to university, if you like, as a first introduction to culture as an abstract thing. You know, it's something that had a history and participants and rows inside of it. What I felt mostly for a long time was intimidation and shame that I didn't get it. Now, eventually I got it. But I do think, especially in this country, culture can't be spoken about without talking about class. I think it was already mentioned, it's a question of access. It's a question of equity, whatever vocabulary we want to put it on. There was a moment, it wasn't one where funding got any better for the arts and for culture, but there was a moment where, for example, the infrastructure that it would allow you have the time and the resources to participate, even just to read by your own self, that was there. It was the benefit system. It was rent allowance. It was access to cheap rent. It was not getting punished for not having a job or for taking some time to think. That same moment happened in universities, very, very briefly, but there was a moment where universities, in particular, universities like the University of Brighton, they committed to being student-centered when the polytechnics turned into being what we now think of as the post-92 universities. They were student-centered. That was their job. And their students were students like I was when I started university, students who were very unsure about what any of this meant and whether or not you had a right to be there. Now that's getting squeezed out. You know, the benefit system has long since become a punitive apparatus for slapping people into shape. The university system is going the same way. And when I think of the way in which our senior managers, not just at Brighton, you know, this is nationally, I cannot but help but see them as complicit with a system that's determined to drive out student-centered education. And that student-centered education, not universally, but definitely for me, and I think for a generation like me, that's the demographic for culture. Not just, you know, for people to be consumers of a commercial culture, but for actually people to be in some way engaged, whether as participants or critics, you know, people who want a good row. How are you going to produce that if you no longer have a student-centered education? Now, what they're trying to do at the University of Brighton, apart from the trashing of our jobs, is increase a student-staff ratio that's already far too big. Now, when you dig right down into that at the granular level, me losing my job isn't that important. But a student, a first-year student, say coming from a family where they don't have a lot of access to culture. I mean, that's a horrible way of putting it, but you get me. There's not, mom and dad didn't go to university, or maybe money is tight or whatever. That student comes in and you're sitting in a seminar of 25 people instead of say 12, 13 or 14. How are you going to get the confidence to talk? How are you going to get the confidence? The first time you read a page, for me, it was James Joyce's Portrait of an Artist. That book made me cry. You know, I couldn't understand it. I couldn't guess it. What was trying to happen here? It took ages and really patient, important choosers to help me see that I could guess it. So apologies, I've rambled, but I do think it's important. There's a political attack which is happening now. There's a name for it. I don't care whether you call it capitalism or neoliberalism or austerity, but what's happening now is a political attack. And I think the senior management team sitting in the middle of it, they say it's not their fault, you know, that there's nothing they can do about it. Tuition fees haven't increased with the cost of inflation. They need to make sure that everything goes okay. I think it is their fault. You see what's happening. Your sector is being trashed. You know, if you're not going to stop it, step out of the way and let somebody who will stop it step in.
Yeah, I do really agree with what you've been saying about access to education on that level. And it just, one thing I want to say, I guess, is that art schools were a bit unusual. They weren't like universities in the 70s and 80s. And because they were kind of restructured, they had access to funding and methodologies that universities, particularly old-fashioned universities, took ages to grapple with. You know, all sorts of challenging of authorities, you know, whatever, sociology or structuralism or feminism or all of those sorts of things, which were seeded in art schools really easily just because of the way it had been restructured. So obviously so many different things. People aren't, there isn't just one timeline going onwards. There's loads of different timelines going on, and there's different things falling apart at different rates. So, I mean, yeah. So, and I suppose what I go back to about the Coldstream report and the 48 times this committee of men, white men, met to think about the future of art education and then decide not to change it. They decided in the end that that the art school was fine. It didn't need to be interfered with. They could run themselves. It was okay. You know, that's what they decided. And I suppose I spent my whole life criticizing what I received there, you know, white men saying what art was, no women being mentioned, no women being employed. Yeah, also, I don't know. I mean, the whole issue of class was that they did a lot of people who you met in art schools. That is the way that a whole demographic of men after the war got into higher education. So we did meet a lot of people who had working class roots who are now lording it over at art schools, and they took you off to the pub, and well, not me, but prettier girls. And that's how it worked, you know. So there's different lines of development here, but I spent my time coming to terms with that inheritance and criticizing that whole malarkey. And now I'm coming back to realizing that at the same time, it was an enormous resource, and it was incredibly, it did make access for all sorts of demographics and class and race and all that sort of thing in principle.
If I dare, I do understand that the situation at present is quite dire at the very least. But one thing I did or was intrigued about coming tonight was to hear about what could be done, because normally in these situations, it's an opportunity. The rest, it's gone to shit. Let's be honest. It has collapsed. You know, you've lost your three best institutions here. I'm not from Brighton. I've been here 3 years. When I arrived, I identified that it wasn't really working that well, to be perfectly honest. I'm from London. I'm in the art scene, but more of a professional hobby than a profession. And at the same time, it's full of talent here. And basically, you have to revolutionize it, you know, at the same time as sort of seeing, and it is tragic what's happening, there's no doubt. But I'd be very interested to hear about the engagement, not just from the art community, but engaging with other communities, business communities and the rest of it, and making it attractive, because this is an opportunity for me, as I see it. And at the same time, some of the institutions that have been operating, dare I say, weren't doing it very effectively either. You know, they haven't been engaging with the wider community. It's not cooperative here. It should be more cohesive and cooperative. And it's the diaspora is very attractive in Brighton. But at the same time, if you want to promote the arts, you've got to start connecting. And at the same time, you need ideas. And I'm glad you've hosted this evening tonight. That's why I'm here. But I know it's a lot of responsibility on whom or when or what, but people need to start working together to make something worth and make it a revolution and make it attractive to other people coming in. Because at the moment, it's failing, but it's not just in Brighton. It's failing throughout all sorts of institutions, institutional areas and economic areas of activity. It needs to be migrating and some positive energy. So I'm very interested to hear what people have got in ideas to reinvigorate it, because this is an opportunity.
Yeah, does anyone want to respond to some of this?
I disagree with you in that a lot of organisations in Brighton are fantastic collaborators and work in partnership to get funding into the city, not from Arts Council, but other funders. Partnership is what we do. We rarely do anything on our own. For the past 24 years, we've been struggling to get a dedicated dance space into Brighton. We finally managed it through COVID and through Brexit, but we did that in cooperation with other organisations, and we work right across the Southeast, hence the name Southeast Dance. So we work right across the whole of the Southeast, not London, and we work in partnership across that. And we work in partnership with local organisations. We're like this with Brighton Dome Brighton Festival. They rent a space in our building for their office. You know, we work with Phoenix around the cultural corridor. We work with Brighton Centre for the Creative Arts. We work with Laura McDermott at Attenborough Centre. So there is a real feel of cooperation in Brighton. I mean, sure, some people are solo players, and that's, you know, if they want to be solo players, fine. But, you know, we're a broad church and we want to work with everybody. We want to be able to allow access to everyone to the arts in Brighton.
Do you think you're talking to each other too much? I mean, I'm just raising an observation, because there's engagement, but you're talking to each other. You need accountants and lawyers and property people to engage with the arts and become part of that community where it's cool. Like if you go to Berlin and other cities and Antwerp, it's fused. There is a disconnect here. That's all I'm saying. So you're speaking to each other and being cohesive, but you're missing the, you know, dare I say it, the dirty word, the commercial aspects of people who will spend money. And I'm not trying to sort of say commercialize, but I'm saying engage. That's all. Sorry.
I think we do that as well. We're just not necessarily really overt about it, because it's not, actually things like sponsorship, for example, is actually really, really hard in this city, because there is one organisation that takes quite a lot of the, sucks up quite a lot of that. I think on our boards, we do have people who are from those backgrounds. We do cultivate it. A lot of us are very small as teams. I think it's really worth acknowledging that. We don't have big fundraising departments. We don't have big development departments. One of the things I just wanted to say on a more positive note, actually, was it was great to have Katie on earlier with social circles. One of the things that we've instigated a little pilot of at Phoenix for the summer is something called collective conversations. And that's bringing collectives of artists together to actually be in our main gallery space to talk, to actually just activate the space, activate their collaborations and their partnerships. So we're doing it in sort of microcosms, and we are also doing it in wider partnerships. But I think you've got to be really realistic about how underfunded the arts are, how small the teams are, and how we work really damn hard all the time to look at all sorts of different opportunities, from corporate to whatever it might be. I think it's just being realistic. The arts have been cut and cut and cut and cut. So I'm not even going to tell you how long I've been in the arts for, but it's a very, very long time. And I have seen funding being cut. I've seen the opportunities being cut. I've seen big foundations growing and being very specific about who they fund. And it's not necessarily grassroots organisations. So we're doing it the best we can. But we can do better. Of course we can do better, but we need some support to do that as well.
Sorry, just to chip in, kind of in support, but with everybody. From my own perspective, I'm not underfunded. I'm not funded at all, of course. It's just something which I'm passionate about, and have to find communication lines with organisations and artists worldwide just to keep the doors open. There's no collectors in Brighton. No one's buying anything in Brighton. So I have to look outside Brighton all the time. And I'm certainly not looking to the Arts Council, because I think they shut down creativity. And I'm certainly not looking to this government to make anything better for us, because I think their agenda is to shut down free thinking. That's why they so harsh on the arts. And I think, just to mention something which mentioned just earlier on, about Hornsey in 68, Croydon, sit-ins. Sometimes you've got to take control of your own destiny and just grab it and decide what you really want to do. And that should really be what art is about anyway, without waiting for any kind of green light from anybody else. So although I'm not really probably not making any sense here at all, and not really adding to the dialogue, but I think there's a lot to be said for just forging ahead regardless of funding, if you can, of course, if it's possible, and just keeping the creative spirit firing,
If you can afford to keep going and making art, then, I think we find a lot of people from working class backgrounds can't do that. So then, therefore, they have to do something else. And then, therefore, we're forcing a whole class of people out of the arts. So I think that's just important to recognise.
There's a great tradition of working class artists.
Yeah.
Just being working class doesn't stop you from being artistic.
I'm not saying it is. It's just not equitable.
And it's becoming harder.
I just wanted to come back on this conversation with something sort of an elephant in the room, in a way, that, people like Gregory Cholet, if you've read his Dark Matter, talk about in very clear detail, that we are talking about a kind of entertainment industry that's a pyramid structure. There is no room at the top for everybody. We're all competing with each other. It's the same as what's happening in the pools now of people, people are thinking about having to write statements to show that they're better than other colleagues. This is a horrible situation. It's structural, it's intended, and it's, the dark matter that Gregory Cholet talks about that makes the art world, the top of the art world function, are all the kind of invisible people doing it anyway because they're interested, maybe more community, people who are amateur artists, people who teach art, those people who have, anyway, so Brighton has got a huge amount of that. It is a huge dark matter, Brighton, isn't it? I mean, everybody and so that in a way that what stops people, in my experience, in art schools, ever doing any kind of political action recently, is this sort of individualism that has got into people's soul, that they don't think they're part of a group somehow or other. So I think anything that can, like you keep saying, collectivize, or people are saying like, why don't I know about what's going on over there? And in a way that, we are very atomized, and if there are kind of issues that can galvanize people, then there can be a sit-in like the students just showed us. It's about bringing to the fore the kind of galvanizing points.
Yeah, I can agree with the point that you made earlier about just making your own path, because in some way I had experience as a Latin American artist, because in some way, like, I came here and of course, like, there's been a lot of lovely people, like British, like, friends, tutors and whatever, who have helped me. But I feel like for applying to stuff and just getting support, like, I don't really get that at all. Like, I just like me and other, like, the few minorities that we are here in the UK, like, they don't really get that support. Like, it always feels like, like a competition. And it's sometimes even like the art institutions per se, the hypocrisy as well, of just like, oh yeah, we are, we embrace equality and just from diverse backgrounds, but they always, when it comes to like open calls or competitions or art jobs, it's always the same people that they hire. They don't really, But well, in places like London, like, I think there's more of that, but maybe because in London there's more of like diverse, like, international community, while in Brighton it's just mostly white Londoners that come here to Brighton. And it's, when it comes to like the arts, it's just, again, who are involved with those circles are always like the same type of people. And yeah, in some way, like, even though I found it really hard to just, be involved in communities and stuff, in some way I sadly had to path my own way as well. And I don't like that because I feel really alone. But of course I try to like be around with my friends and other collaborators, but it's like this. Sometimes some people say they are all about inclusivity, but they're actually not, or they just focus on the wrong areas. So yeah, that's.
So I'm going to sort of combine two questions that I had here. So really, I was partly thinking about the university as being public facing and fostering inclusivity, and some of the stuff that's the longer history of Brighton University as being a university that has been public facing. It had the CCA, and it had some really inclusive approaches to teaching. And so one of my questions was really about the relationship between universities and the broader community and how that functions. And the second thing, sort of, I suppose what I wanted to just raise the CCA itself and just ask, what do we think are going to be the broader implications of the closure of the CCA?
Again, I think it's quite hard for me to speak as somebody who's not, although we have partnerships with the university, they're quite small, quite limited. So I sort of struggle to talk about how the community itself engages with the wider community, because I don't know. Maybe that's because they don't and it's not visible, or they do and it's just not apparent. In terms of the CCA and its loss, it was, in 5 years, it had really brought a really powerful program to the city, and it was different. And I think that was one of the things that's really critical, is that everything, we all doing different things in our different organisations. I'm very aware from a sort of national perspective and international perspective what CCA brought. And I know that Phoenix isn't at a position, we do have national and international shows, but we're not there yet with our artistic program to be able to replicate that. I'm not sure we want to, but we had a really solid infrastructure of different types of visual arts activity in the city. And it's becoming very, it's going to become very monoculture if we're not careful, simply because of the visibility, and we're not going to get the audiences down. If those that know me will know that I have a bit of an issue with the Brighton Festival and their visual arts, what they actually produce each year. So I'm not sure it's enough to sustain the whole year's worth of programming. And I think we could just do a lot better in Brighton. So, and CCA going, maybe it's an opportunity. Some people have said that. At the moment, I'm still in shock because I find it really devastating to see it that it's gone. But it's just, it's slowly being eroded out of lack of interest.
Is that it? Is that what they say? It's because of lack of interest?
No, they're not saying that. That's me saying that. But CCA is going because it's part of the redundancy, it's part of the cuts, and that, you know, yeah, it's a lack. I think it's a lack of interest and a lack of understanding about what the arts could bring to the university. But obviously, I'm not there. Oh, Lou has now got a question.
Just a really quick observation that it is stunning that they, you know, all universities in the country that have got art colleges or were art colleges, they have a gallery attached to the university with some standing and some reputation where you might want to show your work, and other, you know, artists will want to go and show their work. University of Brighton, yeah, just fucking get rid of it, because we can save a bit of money. They've worked really hard for 5 years to make it a really good program, but actually we're not interested in that at all. We're only interested in running a functioning income and expenditure machine. It's disgusting.
Apart from partnering with the university on some participatory programs to do with health and well-being, we call on the expertise from the School of Media and have called on their expertise over a number of years. In fact, one of the lecturers there, Claudia Kappenberg, is one of the leading experts in screen dance in the UK. She's the editor of Screen Dance magazine, which is international. She has a huge amount of experience and expertise around screen dance, and she is at risk of losing her job. She co-produces with me, she co-curates with me Brighton's International Screen Dance Festival that we launched last year. And we have plans to do the next one in the next year in 2024. And we'll lose that expertise. And that's devastating to me.
This is probably also not very helpful, but as a perspective on what it's like with working with other universities, I've done quite a number of exhibitions with universities. Just about to go to Leicester to work with De Montfort University there in an exhibition. There's funding, there's a space, there's budget, not a lot, but there's a kind of will to bring in artists from different places, as it's an accepted part of the program. Not just to show the art of the people who are coming through the educational system in that city, but to bring in artists from other places and show new things. So why the hell we haven't got this here it's a travesty, really. It is an absolute travesty. I think we probably all agree with that, but damn it, it's I think we really need to say it loud, you know, say it really loud.
Yeah, I suppose just echoing that, I'm thinking of John Hansard down in Southampton, which is an amazing gallery space. It took many years for them to get the funding together to actually make that space, but it's a great gallery, really good artists showing that, and it's part of the university, so it is doable. You just have to have the will. They just have to have the will to make sure it's part of their offer, really.
Hello, I'm actually a student at Brighton Uni. I've just finished, just graduated, and I was actually really lucky to be one of the students whose exhibition was in the gallery. So it's just ended now, but yeah, I just want to highlight the importance of the gallery, because obviously with COVID that actually completely messed up the course anyways, but that exhibition was so vital just to us as students to be able to showcase our work. And yeah, I just want to highlight the actual importance of having that space and being able to have that exhibition. Not only is it a celebration of finishing and all the hard work that we did, but also just to get what's the word, visibility, and the fashion, textiles, arts world is obviously competitive anyways, but yeah, having that visibility was so important. So yeah, it's a real yeah, it's a shame, but yeah.
Just quickly, I can stand by your statement, because I graduated fine art degree in COVID, so I didn't get a degree, an end of year show, and it sucked. To put it bluntly, it was awful. And it's yeah, you do 3 years of creative practice to submit a video, and I did video art, so it was, I suppose I was gonna say it's a bit better for me, but it's still shit. But it was just awful. Yeah, submitting something online, and that was your whole, that was it. That was there was no, yeah, no celebration, no anything, no show of what you've done in those years. So I think it's really important, really, really important.
Speaking as someone who has taught at art at Brighton for many years, we use that exhibition space quite often for student work, and particularly in the second year, all schools of art had a second year show to a professional standard second year show in the gallery space, and it was a really important learning time for all the students and working together and everything. And when CCA was imposed from above, we didn't know anything about it. The condition was no student access. No student access to the gallery. So that really important part of any artist's work, to learn how to put stuff up on a wall and what it looks like at a professional standard, didn't happen. And now we're in Edward Street or something like that. So how it was handled from atop the CCA was not integrated at all in the community of artists and education that was going on at Brighton and has been for many years. So that was a real missed opportunity. And it's taken some time for that to sort of mend and people to know each other, which is just, I think, a really good example of this senior management kind of way of doing things, that we don't hear about it, we don't know about it. And
we've just got a comment from Claire Wern from Photo Fringe, who has to leave, who says, also wanted to add that as a freelance cultural worker who has been producing visual arts festivals in the city for over 10 years, I am deeply and intimately involved in the experiences of many young, emerging, self-taught students and grad level practitioners, trying to find opportunities to develop and sustain their practice here. There is a lot of cooperative and partnership working. All my projects are rooted in that, especially Photo Fringe, which is broadly volunteer run, and we have to work more broadly, yes, in order to be able to encourage the next generation of artists to come here and stay, but also to contribute to making our festivals and opportunities accessible. To note on the comments just now, our most well-attended exhibition last year at Phoenix was the Collectives Hub. Well done, everyone. It's great that you have come together.
I have got some questions, but what I thought we'd do instead, because we haven't got someone from the university on the main panel anymore, what we would do is just trying to think about what we can do together and what actions we might want to take. So I think this is just really just opening it up a little bit and asking where we could take things from now. I have been thinking about possibly having a follow-up session to this one. I thought that might be a good idea. So that's one thing, but also maybe what you might want for that might be something also to say. And then other things, if people are involved with the university, maybe things that we could do, what might be helpful for us to do. And anything like that, really. Yeah, this is. So we've got a few different ideas. There's the university itself. So there's things that might be done to help in solidarity with what's going on within the university. There's ways in which we might organise in relation to cuts in relation to Brighton as a whole. What can we do as an arts groups, whether we're big groups or whether we're small groups or individual artists? How can we link up? What can we do? Is there anything else that might be worth talking about? And what do we do about the CCA? Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So all of those things combined, and how can we collectively kind of work together to achieve something, really?
There was a funeral for the arts in Amsterdam about 10 years ago when the arts were being cut a little bit. And that had a massive turnout, and they did a whole thing carrying a box with arts written on it. And anyway, that's a great idea. The other thing that we could do is really to harass Brighton City Council, because they have a strong relationship with the university. We could speak to Donna Chisholm, who is a step higher up in the ladder than Marina, who's the arts officer. Donna's head of development and all sorts of things. So I think there's something for us, or big organisations in the city that have got some relationship with Brighton Council, to sort of start to question them about what they're doing about it, because I think that could work. If we did our en masse challenge to Donna Chisholm's portfolio.
With CCA, I'm not sure how retrievable it is in its current form. It's possible there may be an argument to keep the gallery, but as far as I'm aware, the staff are going through a consultation process at the moment, and it's not looking promising from what I understand. But there could, yes, things could change. I love the idea of a funeral, but I also slightly, is that a little bit finite? Yeah, there's going to be a goodbye party for CCA, as you know, and that's happening anyway. But in terms of the wider things that we can do more broadly for the arts in Brighton, I think that we've actually got to step up to the plate and start making sure that people are coming to meetings and that we're going to meetings and that we are present at tables. We forget to be present at tables, and you need to get your feet well stuck under the table as an artist, as an arts organisation, but as a freelancer, as a practitioner. You need to have those voices at the table. It's really important, and knock those doors down, because they're not, otherwise they don't know you're there. They just think Brighton's this fantastic city that's got all sorts of things going on. They forget about the people who are actually doing it. So, well, the other thing to do is just go on strike. But I know that's a slightly trickier one as well. I don't know. I think, you know, as Kath said, I think it's about, it's a sort of pincer movement to influence as many people as we possibly can.
Do you mean a citywide art strike?
I do, but I know that that can backfire massively, particularly for individual freelancers who have to have an income, as all of us do. But you know, artists have to have an income.
Yeah.
So saying I'm going to stop painting for a day, I'm not sure it'll work.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, just have louder voices and more feet under more tables.
So I suppose also, big thank you for coming today, because I think that's that's at least one way in which we are coming together and hearing your voices and sharing voices together, really. And that applies to everybody that's come in the audience as well.
Just suggest, if you haven't registered for the What Next Brighton chapter, which meets every once a month on a Thursday morning from 10 till 11, it's really great there, because we often get Arts Council representatives, Marina Norris from the Arts Council's there, from Brighton City Council's there, and you can connect with everyone who's registered there. Any artist is welcome. Any arts organisation is welcome. It's a national organisation, and they have chapters in different cities, and there's different agendas for each meeting, and you can suggest an agenda. They're really democratic spaces where every voice is equal and heard. So if you're not registered for What Next, I'd absolutely recommend you to do that.
Can I also add that on Friday we're doing a What's Next, which is a follow-up from this. So this is actually on Friday. So if anyone wants to come and talk about the same thing we're talking about tonight, but just to follow on from it, I spoke to them, and they've organised. I think I spoke to them on Friday or something, and they've organised. So I'm going, and I feel a bit like I'm weirdly outside of things a bit, but it's quite nice to be invited to go and speak. But it would be good to have other people there with other perspectives. Yeah.
Hi, I partly work in policy influencing in the disability sector, and I just wonder if there's a kind of worth having a strategy for directly influencing policy and parliament, and if anyone's members of an all-party parliamentary group. I think there's one for the visual arts, and looking out for calls for evidence, writing reports and submitting evidence to APPGs, but also an observation like the stories people are telling, particularly like students and lecturers, and how they're being impacted on a personal, emotional level, are really powerful. And narratives and stories really influence MPs. And there's so many talented people in the room. I just wonder if it's worth having an initiative to collect those stories, whether through interviews or video, and like snapshots of how it's really affecting people's personhood and lives.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I would also say that we'll turn this recording into a podcast. So I'm going to do that tomorrow and get it up tomorrow. That's the aim anyway. So, but I think more things like this, and we can do more things like this basically, and we can have more sessions. But also, if people want me to record things and put them up on our site,
yeah, I think
that would be really good
to have quite personal, intimate, one-to-one interviews
Yeah.
that are done
Well,
in a
we could do similar
yeah,
things to
practical way.
what we've been doing with Exploding Appendix, but we could do them
One-to-one.
one-to-one, and we could do some more different things. But yeah, I'm happy to work on that.
Can I just, yeah, I know who to send it to. So I was just going to say, I mean, I don't know who, I know who to send it to in the visual arts sector. And so CVAN National do a lot of advocacy work, and they do have Paula, who's the director of CVAN, is very, very good at speaking to the right people and getting information. And so we have a CVAN Southeast. I'm on the steering group for that. So that's the Contemporary Visual Arts Network Southeast group. So you can feed it to us or feed it to CVAN National directly. I know the visual arts bit, but in terms of other sector advocacy groups, not sure. I mean, technically, it should be the Arts Council, but it won't.
But we can look into that as well.
Yeah.
It might be also good to talk about the connection between humanities and the arts, because I think, well, at least in my work, I definitely think it crosses over between the humanities and the arts. I don't see them as particularly separate. I think they're very much, like, if you're thinking about your ideas in relation to your art, if you're an artist that thinks about their ideas, you're going to be using the humanities as well. So I don't see those as particularly separate. Pardon? Parliament does. Yeah, sorry.
You should be engaging with a wider community of accountants and professionals that can give you that insight, that would engage. And that's what I'm trying to say. Engage with these people. You can do. You can. They will listen. I mean, I'm here suggesting it. I won't give all. I can't necessarily, but I hope I help. Obviously, what I'm saying is, you engage with a firm of accountants that there's loads engaged in Brighton, and they will come to the same conclusion as you've done. But you need to engage with them. And my criticism of all of the community, I'm not saying you lot, but just from an outside looking in, you're not engaging wide enough. You need to get more professional, more people engaged with it that can give you that expertise that would slaughter those people. And yet at the same time, a decent accountant or a decent practice will say, you don't need to do that. You could do this. And so what I'm trying to say is widen your horizons, widen them and engage quickly. Because now's the time, because what the previous speaker just said with insight is absolutely correct. There is a fucking way around that. And professionals will give you that.
Yeah, at a price. And to be fair, a lot of people have gone on strike, who've had to go on strike or about to lose their jobs.
No, I agree.
I know people who've been on strike for 18 days unpaid. There's a limit to how they can find 250 quid an hour to pay an accountant.
No, I understand that.
To do the work.
But you shouldn't just engage with them professionally. You need to engage with them on a level where they're involved.
I appreciate that. And I think those of us in arts and organisations spend quite a lot of time trying to get pro bono work from lawyers and accountants.
But it's beyond pro bono. To be honest, it's beyond pro bono. If you're in Berlin, people engage because they want to, not because it's a professional exchange.
But what you're actually saying, though, is for some of these lecturers who are at risk of losing their jobs, that they need to go out and find an accountant or a financial.
No, I am not saying that the lecturer or the people, I'm saying the community needs to engage. That's my point. And the community is not currently engaged with that. That's obvious, because if they were, you'd be getting this advice. Are there any professional firms here tonight? No. If you got some professionals and said to them, help us, not pro bono, but say, you're here, you're in Brighton, this is our community, we're valuable to you. You need to sell yourselves as a community and engage other people. At the moment, it's isolated, it's not engaged. And then the more that engagement comes on, the more these people get involved.
In reply to the chap who says we're in an echo chamber, which is probably correct because we're all creative and artists in here. And
humanities.
And humanities as well, not to leave out that.
Yeah.
Is that the point of this is to get it out beyond the community. So yes, you are right, but that's what this is the whole point in this. And a lot of people in Brighton and further afield don't know the impact of what's happening right now. So this is a tiny little speck of what could possibly be a massive
thing, like once we all spread the word. And we all know, like, yes. And we all have different friends in different areas of life. So we're going to spread the word that way.
When I was working out who to put on the panel, I had also thought, did we need to talk about to people like who are dealing with, like, you know, I was thinking about maybe talking to Acorn, because housing issues will affect the arts. So, you know, all these things were in my mind. And you know, we could have ended up with 100 people on the panel. So, but you know, I think that's why maybe it would be good to do another session like this, and actually to follow up, and maybe have some people come and join us again. Yes. Do you want to send the mic back?
Because I definitely, like, having been in the arts for so long and so old and all that, and all the terrible things that have been happening in the world and also in this country, and then austerity, you know, you think, what about the arts? You know, you just feel a bit of a dick, really. But I mean, you know, somehow to be able to articulate the importance of it without sounding like, you know, somebody you know, because it is like Patricia was saying, it is a very class riddled assumption place. And, you know, that is how the whole patronage model works. You know, whole corporations will buy a level at the Tate for X number of money, whatever, so they can have a party there, because it greases the social world. You know, Hans Hackett says that is the truth about the industry that we're in. You know, it does have social capital, cultural capital, whatever.
Yeah, I do.
Chip in very briefly on that very point. I was engaged with the campaign against the Sackler family, which you would probably know about. So it's possible. If you can structure your fight in the right way, you can win.
I think this isn't an ask, it's a possible offer, but I'm looking at one of my staff members who I know I was told not to make an offer from Phoenix, but please, we've got too much on at the moment. But in terms of meeting space, if people want to have a space to meet, we may well be able to facilitate that. So we can offer that up as somewhere to actually meet and talk and try and crack some of these big issues.
So if we did a follow-up from this, maybe we could do something.
I will check with my venue manager, but yes, probably.
Yeah, fantastic.
But I think actually it'd be good, you know, it's nice in an arts organisation as well.
There is a communication channel on WhatsApp already. So if people, I can just check that I'm allowed to invite people. I think it is about broader community, so I will check with that. So yeah, if not, we can do something with Exploding Appendix. I did also have the idea of doing something like manifestos for a city, so that we all write manifestos for a city, and maybe we combine to write a singular manifesto for the city. So that was just one idea that I had. I'm happy to use it as a space to publish things. So if there's something like that we can do, that's fine. But if there's other people doing things, that also just let us know. We can use our social media. I think it'd be good to be able to sort of all share social media to some extent around this. So we can just come together. Physical, yeah. So, and we can do panel, we can also do interviews, we can do one-on-one interviews about this. Yeah, and I suppose if people are interested in getting involved, because I mean, I run Exploding Appendix, but there's a lot of it ends up being me. So if people want to get involved with stuff, please also tell me, and it'd be good to have some people on board. And also, I'm sure there'll be other organizations. So if other people are doing things, let us know, and we're trying to promote what other people are doing as well. Yeah.
I'm also happy to offer space for people to come together. We've got a boardroom that's lovely.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
it's new.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's but it only seats like 15 people. So, you know, if we wanted to have a wider panel discussion, we could do it in the Jamie Watton creation space, which can turn into a small theatre for 120 people seats. So if you want to do something that's a little bit wider across the community, that we advertise a little bit wider and really get the information out there, we could do something like that.
Fantastic, thank you. Given that I've always about not to ask any questions, I'm going to look and see if there's anything I wanted to ask about. I did have one question, which I'm not going to go through the whole details, which was about the relationship between the arts and the humanities. I also had a question about this idea, which has already been mentioned, about leveling down and its effect on broader funding decisions and its impact on the arts and the community. I did have a question about a whole range of things about workers' rights, inflation, cost of living crisis, housing, and I think that was what I was mentioning about a minute ago with ACORN and things like ways in which those issues, broader issues, community issues, might actually feed into our thinking about the arts. ACORN is a housing, it's a housing union. So that was why I haven't contacted them, but they were one of the people that I thought maybe I should contact them, and then that got shelved. But yeah, it dawns. I feel like issues of having our basic needs met is also really important for the arts, and actually that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the living situation, because of course, like in the past, like, yeah, rent wouldn't be, such a, well, it will be like an issue, but artists will still be comfortable. But now, since rent has gone incredibly up, and well, it's crazy. And of course, like artists nowadays, I know friends that manage to, get save some money by living in guardianships, it's really cheap, but of course that's more unstable than just renting out a normal place. So yeah, definitely, if at some point you can have someone from ACORN to join, yeah, because it's crazy how rent has just gone up, for something that, as you said, it's just basic. Yeah.
I do think we need to know what our ask is and what we're able to do together as the arts, because I think if you do get the lawyers in, or you get the community organisations in, or you get the housing associations in, everyone who's struggling has got their own agenda. So I think it's actually really important as a sector, the arts sector, that we know what we're talking about, we know what we want, and we know how we want to get it.
Yeah, I guess
so that we're really informed before we walk into other conversations, and then we lose that momentum because we're not quite sure what it is we're actually asking for.
So I think there's two things we can do. I think one is about building conversations, and one is actually sort of working out what we're going to achieve and mobilizing around it. And sometimes I think it's really important to have a broader vision. So you've almost got slightly utopian vision, but also then having sort of really practical, pragmatic goals that you can try and achieve. Yes, do you want to hand the microphone back? Oh, someone who I'm not.
Sort of hesitant to say this because it'll sound extremely naive, but amongst friends now. So, but I don't know if anyone remembers a few months ago on Question Time, when I saw it on Instagram actually, but a woman was speaking, stood up, I don't know what town they were in, but kind of eviscerated the Tory person on the panel by, I think she might have been in Bristol actually, by saying, just sort of listing everything that was, we've got no housing, you complain about youth on the street, but there's no youth services, everything has been cut back. And it was an amazing moment because she was so articulate, and it just sort of, she plainly put forward what has been stripped away by this government over 13 years. And I feel the same about the arts, particularly, in the whole country, but it feels like the loss of Fabrica and Lighthouse and now the CCA, it's like an absolute crisis point. And I know that maybe a lot of people living in the city are not aware of it having even happened, or don't feel the impact of it, but they will eventually feel the impact of it. And it's that we need to, it's so amazing when someone says the truth. Yeah, and we need to be saying that to someone somewhere, not on Question Time, but, about
Well,
what's
maybe
happening
on
in
purpose.
Brighton. That'd be brilliant, yeah, but yeah.
So Caroline Lucas will say something if we can speak to her. Caroline Lucas. No, she's not stepped down yet. It's in 12 months. She's given notice and she is still considering her options for the future. So I think this might be a time to gather her kudos nationally to talk about the challenges that we've got here in Brighton.
Well, maybe we could do a session and invite her as one of the people.
I do think that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know your name, I'm sorry, but you're from Phoenix, are you? Yeah. So Phoenix is now the most important arts institution in Brighton. Fact, you've organized this evening. If you're going to mobilize these forces, you need to coordinate and, as you said, focus and then deliver. And at the moment, you've got a small panel here, which is obviously the most important people. Well, I don't know if there's any other wider people in Brighton.
We're in contact with some other people as well. So
you
it's
should
like,
be.
yeah.
So you need to coalesce, focus, give these people the license to represent you and then fight.
Yeah.
And then deliver that message and then engage, as I said earlier, I'm sorry, I'm being blunt really, because I really do want you to succeed. Engage with these organizations, explain your dilemma. But if you're coordinated, you will succeed.
I think we will be. I think we're
you'll
coming together.
Yeah. If you
There
bring
are-
together,
I think that,
yeah.
okay, bringing this panel together was within just over a week.
Brilliant.
And already I feel like I've got so many more contacts within Brighton as a city. And I hope that's not just for a personal gain. I want that to be really so that we can all mobilize together. And I hope that, and I feel like the things I've heard, not just from the people on the panel, but people that wanted to be on the panel, but couldn't be on the panel, I feel like there's actually something to be really excited about.
Equally as much, less is more. You don't need loads and loads of people in the panel. You're already making sense. Just get on with it.
Yeah. And also, I think it's also important to say that everyone here has great things to say, and it's not just there's so many great ideas and things to say here. It's kind of exciting. Do you want to pass the mic over?
I think the point about having the clear policy ask is really, really crucial. And whether it's worth, because there are so many people involved with things to say, have a repository of information place.
Yeah.
So people can just brain dump what they think policy asks should be, rather than a big meeting and everyone shouting, which is going to be quite hard to manage.
Well, I think there's going to have to be lots of different things going on, really. But some things that will really focus things, and some things that will broaden them out. I think all of that's really needed.
Can I just say the thing about advocacy that you were talking about? I mean, I've heard.
You need to go. Sorry, just you need to go, don't you? But can I just say real big thank you to everyone that's been on the panel. I think it's been really great having you, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us. And I hope that things we can all together move forward with things in the future. Yeah, thank you so much.